We should have one shortly.
Yeah, there's that.
We need to go get our Snickers and.
Good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock, and I will call to order the January 27th meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the January 13th meeting. They're in your packet. Any questions regarding the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion? We have a motion. Not yet.
A second.
Okay. Please vote. Next up is and it passes. Next up is the consent docket. 23 items on the consent docket today. Plans and specifications, several contract amendments, and change orders. Fairly sizable docket today. Are there any items on the consent docket that any of the trustees would like to pull for individual consideration or have any questions on? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent docket? I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And it passes. We have no items on the concurrence docket. We have no items on the emergency construction contracts and part of the agenda. Next up, items for individual consideration, a resolution authorizing the filing of application with the Water Resources Board for assistance through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Loan Program. This is something we do on an almost annual basis?
Annually, Mr. Chairman. And so what we do is we put a package together and submit to the Oklahoma Water Resources Board for consideration for both clean water and drinking water. This year's package includes work on the Overholser Dam, the chlorination system at the North Canadian Wastewater Treatment Plant, and several sewer line rehab projects. Totaling about $69 million. So this item will ask your approval to submit the application accordingly for their consideration.
But this type of request from the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, we do regularly, and this is not significantly different outside the dollar amount and such
Correct.
from the ones we've done each year.
Correct.
Are there any questions regarding the resolution?
No, sir.
Seeing none, is there a motion for approval? And it passes. Items from trustees this afternoon. General manager reports. Mr. Browning.
Thank you, sir. A couple of things. First of all, we have Brian Nazarinas with us here today. He's going to give you all an update on the Kiamichi River project.
Good afternoon. So how do I, oh, there we are. Right. So good afternoon. I'm Brian Nazarinas with the firm of Nazarinas, Stack, and Wambacher in Denver. For those of you who don't know me, I've had the honor of representing Aquit in the city for its Kiamichi River water rights matter since about 2010 when I worked closely with Chairman Couch on the negotiation of and drafting of the settlement agreement, and then obtained the water permit after that, and proceeded on with the litigation through court for the appeal of that permit, which was ultimately upheld by the Oklahoma Supreme Court. And then a couple of years ago, I was asked to lead the team for permitting Aquit's federal permitting for the project. So that's the purpose of my briefing today, walk through that. The topics, first we'll review a history of the development of Aquit's water rights in Sardis Lake and the Kiamichi River. then discuss the internal and external consulting teams or the internal legal and consulting team and the external permitting team, then review the main components of the project. And you'll see KRWMP on a lot of these slides. That's just, project is a shorthand, but the long-term, what it's been designated is the Kaimichi River Water Management Project. So then as I said, we'll review the components of the project, then discuss the federal permitting objectives, review work that's been done to date, and then review the currently anticipated schedule for completion of the permitting. Let's go back one. So before I get into what the future holds, I thought it'd be a good idea to discuss the history that leads up to now. In June 2010, Aquit purchased the water supply storage in Sardis Lake from the OWRB, who had originally acquired it from the United States in 1974. And the state and OWRB were in default under the payment obligations, so the city stepped in and assumed those payment obligations. And that was led by Mr. Couch. And looking back on it, that was the foresight on that. I think was tremendously beneficial to the city, because basically you put all the chips on the table, and it provides you the foundation for moving ahead on this project, pretty much regardless. Very, very, very solid position. In 2011, the Chickasaw and Choctaw Nations brought a federal lawsuit seeking to set aside the city's purchase of the water supply storage, and also seeking to enjoin the issuance by the OWRB of a water permit for the city's Kaimichi water rights. 2012 through 2016, there was mediation with the tribes and the state, and then ultimately that led to the negotiation of the settlement agreement. August 2016, the settlement agreement was executed between the state and the tribes and the city. December 2016, the Congress passed the Settlement Act, and was shortly after that signed by President Obama, which approved the settlement agreement and made it federal law, subject to some subsequent conditions, the relevant one of which for the city was obtaining the water right permit. In October 2017, the OWRB awarded Aquit the water right permit for the project. And then from December 2017 through October 2023, the permit was basically tied up in the courts, and ultimately led, as I said earlier, to the Oklahoma Supreme Court upholding the permit. And then in February 2024, the Secretary of Interior published notice in the Federal Register that the settlement was final and effective under federal law. So that was where we started seriously commencing ahead with the permitting.
Just a point of reference on that, in 2010, when we signed the deal with the state, Brad Henry was governor.
So this is the internal permitting legal and consulting team. Under my leadership, we have Stacy Brownhill, who's been working with me on this project since we obtained the water permit, and is completely involved actually on the permitting portion of things. And then we have Brown and Caldwell as a subcontractor for the environmental and technical services, and Paul Leonard here is the lead for Brown and Caldwell. And then, Mr. Long, but SRB is heavily involved as a subcontractor in this matter for Brown and Caldwell on the property access, easement, and surveying portions of the project. And then we're working closely with Larry Hare in engineering, Jasmine Morris for public relations, and Patricia Mann on legal. The external team, First is the Chickasaw and Choctaw Nations. We're meeting with them on a regular basis through this. They're the city's partner under the settlement agreement, and they've been really from the day the ink went on the paper. They've been great allies, and working with them has been very productive. So we have corresponding lines of communication at the leadership, legal, public relations, and technical levels. The next is the United States Army Corps of Engineers, and I'll get into their role in a minute, and the Fish and Wildlife Service. Both of these are in Tulsa offices. And then a more limited role is the State Department of Environmental Quality. They're responsible for water quality certification under the 404 permit, which I'll get into, but their role is a more limited role, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So to get a handle on an understanding of where we're going on the permitting, I think it's good to review the project components. This is Sardis Reservoir. This map is incomplete. I think you can see my mouse. The Kiamichi, this little leg to Sardis, that's actually Jack Fork Creek, and the Kiamichi River continues in this direction towards Arkansas. But Sardis Reservoir is at the top, and the city has 116,606 acre-feet of storage space for water supply purposes in Sardis. So releases during times of shortage from Sardis go down the Kiamichi River, which is right here, and that's about a 30-mile stretch. And the city's diversion will be at Moyers Crossing, which is right there. And when there are diversions by the city, there needs to be a 50 CFS bypass that benefits the river downstream. So all this stretch of the river has benefited from the city's operations. And then this green line shows the new pipeline delivering water to Atoka Lake and then on to Oklahoma City.
Brian, before you go on, that location at Moyers Crossing is actually identified in the settlement agreement.
Yeah.
So that's why we picked that point for this structure.
So this is a Venn diagram to attempt to simplify the federal permitting law. The main driver of this is the 404 dredge and fill permit, and you'll hear that referred to as 404 permit, it's under the Clean Water Act, and it's under the authority of the Corps of Engineers. So whenever there's a discharge of material into the waters of the United States, a 404 permit is necessary, and we'll get into, there are a couple of kinds of permits that will be involved here. Then when you seek a 404 permit from the Corps of Engineers, the Corps needs to conduct, or at least take into consideration, NEPA. So that's the National Environmental Protection Act. You also heard things referred to as environmental assessments, EISs. We're not expecting an EIS in this, but you'll hear those things referred to generally. And that's to take their role is to take a hard look at the environmental effects of the proposed project. Then further, if there are endangered species that'll be affected by the proposed action, then consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service is necessary. So that's the smaller gray area. And then a little bit to the side, there's also consideration of National Historic Preservation Act. Compliance is necessary, so, and I'll touch on how that's relevant here. So in terms of this project, there are two kinds of 404 permits that are relevant. There's a nationwide permit and there's an individual permit. And there'll be a nationwide permit for the pipeline and an individual permit for the intake. And I'll get into what those involve. The nationwide permit for the pipeline. So nationwide permits are general permits issued for categories of activity. So general categories across the nation that that would involve dredge and fill of material into the waters of the United States, but have a minimal adverse effect on water quality and the aquatic environment. So there's a nationwide permit in place for utility lines for water. So that would effectively be the pipeline. And under the nationwide permit framework, the NEPA analysis is already done at the nationwide level when the nationwide permit is issued. However, you're still required to do Endangered Species Act compliance. So you have to consult if there are any species, you have to investigate whether there are any species along the pipeline and consult with the Fish and Wildlife Service on those species. And again, for this nationwide permit, we're talking about the pipeline route, not about the river. And then also consideration of the Historic Preservation Act is required. And those surveys had been done. There was one significant cultural resource that was located, archaeological site, and the pipeline was routed around that site. It was a 3,000 to 4,000-year-old site. So the pipeline investigations by Brown and Caldwell and SRB, the pipeline route and appurtenant facilities, including the property access, have been investigated. As I said, the National Historic Preservation Act has been complied with. Those surveys have been conducted. There have been environmental investigations in the field, so spots where the pipeline would cross, there are some streams and things where the pipeline would cross, and the plant life and the aquatic habitat has been investigated in those areas. And then the pipeline route and appurtenant facilities concept engineering has been conducted. So that's all I'm going to talk about as far as the pipeline goes. Well, most of the rest of this discussion is going to focus on the individual permit and activities taken pursuant to that for the intake. So individual permits are required when the dredge and fill of material into waters of the United States may have adverse effects on water quality and the aquatic environment. So they're more complicated than nationwide permits. They require greater scrutiny. And an individual permit is going to be required for the proposed intake because of its adverse effects on the water quality and aquatic environment of the Kiamichi River. And specifically, as I'll get into, there are, the Kiamichi River is critical habitat for a number of mussels that have been listed by the Fish and Wildlife Service as endangered species. So that's the main driver here. And then also for the intake site, we're going to need to go ahead and conduct National Historic Preservation Act surveys for the intake area. But the focus is the discussion, as you'll see, is going to be on the Endangered Species Act. So NEPA is required for the intake, but and this goes to Director Browning's comment earlier, but it's a constrained NEPA analysis. It's limited to what's called the OWRB permit area, and that's pursuant to the settlement agreement. So this polygon here is actually in the city's water permit, and it's specifically contemplated by the settlement agreement. And the intake needs to be located in this general area. And you can see Moyers is right here. And so we have it narrowed down to a couple of feasible sites within this polygon area. And the NEPA analysis really can't consider areas, locations that are outside of this. So Hugo or something like that is effectively ruled out as a matter of law. And that was a term that was negotiated in the settlement agreement specifically. So this is a conceptual depiction of what the intake at Moyers will look like. What is being pursued is a riverbank intake. There will not be a dam across the river to impound the water of the Kiamichi. So fish passage and recreational uses will not be obstructed by a dam. This is, again, a conceptual intake, but I know Director Browning is focused on pursuing this, and it's feasible. When the flows are released from Sardis, combined with there's some deep water pools in this stretch, and there's also bedrock that emerges in this area that creates a sort of hydraulic barrier. So all that together, we believe, our technical people believe, that the riverside intake is feasible. Riverbank intake is feasible. So I'm going to go again. I touched on some of these points, but to really specify in detail the environmental flow benefits to the Kiamichi River from Aquit's Kiamichi River operations under the settlement agreement. So during periods of drought, water is going to be released from Sardis Lake down the Kiamichi, 30-mile stretch, critical habitat, the mussels. And as I'll show you in a minute, the Kiamichi River often dries up during droughts. So there will be water there that historically was not there during drought periods for delivery to Moyers. And then there'll be a 50 CFS bypass for the benefit of flows downstream. So the critical habitat of the Kiamichi River will clearly benefit from the city's Sardis releases and the bypass that flows. There'll be an incidental benefit of the city's diversion at Moyers, but it'll be direct and it'll be significant. And that's all required under the settlement agreement. So these slides make the point. So these are pictures of the main stem of the Kiamichi River just above where Jack Fork Creek comes in from Sardis. And it's in August 22, the last drought. And there's less than 1 CFS of flow. And that was the little, you see there's a person here, right here, and here, and that's Mr. Leonard back here. So the flow was physically measured at 1 CFS. And if you look at the hydrologic record of the Kiamichi, there are times where there's just 0 flows. And it really, during droughts particularly, the Kiamichi isn't a gaining stream. By gaining, that means like additional flows coming in and through. It's essentially, this is about what we'd be dealing with, maybe some slight gains, but not significant. And the key to keep in mind is that the Kiamichi River is a short watershed. It isn't even comparable to the North Canadian in terms of the size of the watershed. On the other hand, where it's located, it gets the benefit of heavy rains and storms from the Gulf. But those aren't constant, and when they cease, the river falls off dramatically and quickly. So it's sometimes referred to as a flashy watershed, flashy river. And again, these flows aren't unusual. They occurred in 2011, and they've occurred regularly during drought periods. So we've been referring to Section 7 consultation, and there are 3 endangered species that are known to exist in the Kiamichi River. There's a Ouachita rock pocketbook, there's the scale shell, and the winged maple leaf. And this is a picture, I am told, of a Ouachita rock pocketbook in the Kiamichi River. So I'm going to review Brown and Caldwell's mussels field work and then touch on the river modeling that's occurred pursuant to that. So Brown and Caldwell has developed a mussel study plan in consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and that's an ongoing process. It's located and is in the process of surveying 8 mussel bed study sites in the Kiamichi River. There's one that's above Jack Fork Creek, and there's, I think, one below Moyers, and the rest are in between Jack Fork Creek and Moyers. It's conducted in-depth mussel collection and analysis at the proposed Moyer site. It's conducted an aerial LiDAR of the Kiamichi River. And there are upcoming bathymetric and sediment studies and data collection in the Kiamichi River that are going to be conducted. And now most of that data collection then goes into the river modeling. So the river modeling, the bottom line is the purpose of the river modeling is to understand the environmental effects of the flow releases and diversions on the mussels. But the modeling models the city's water system's future demands, so we can understand the projected timing and amounts and rates of the city's releases from Sardis, and understand the benefit to the habitat from that. The model uses the most up-to-date Corps river operations model that in accordance with the Corps standards. It's called a Riverware model, and it allows for daily time steps. It's a very sophisticated operations model. The Chickasaw and Choctaw Nations have been fully involved in the development of this model, and fully agree with that approach. The modeling also incorporates the field study data, and then the result will be an analysis, as I alluded to, of the effects on the mussels to support the formal consultation under Section 7, and that'll enable the city to obtain what's called an incidental take permit from the Fish and Wildlife Service, which is necessary to get the 404 permit from the Corps of Engineers. So here, some photos of some of the field activity, where my mouse is. That's the location and identification of these mussel locations, and there are 8. And Mr. Leonard worked closely with Fish and Wildlife Service, but also Karen Vaughn at the University of Oklahoma. She had done several studies up and down the Kiamichi River of the mussels, and helped help Mr. Leonard identify the particular sites. This is a mussels. And over here on the right, this is the survey team for the river channel, bottom types, and habitat. So each of those mussel sites, you want to understand what the topography is and what the soil types are, and that goes into the river model to assess the environmental impacts of the flows. Another photo, this is the team looking at mussels. And then this is this over here with the little buoy and the flag. That's the proposed mussel site, or in the vicinity of the proposed mussel site. And you can see the riverbank behind. That's the bedrock outcrop that I was referring to. So briefly, we have, as I said earlier, been working with the regulatory agencies and the tribes. We've had 5 in-person meetings since spring 2024 with the Corps of Engineers and 1 virtual meeting. In addition, there have been 2 in-person modeling meetings and 5 virtual modeling meetings. With regards to the Fish and Wildlife Service and the ESA informal consultation, we've had 8 in-person meetings, actually have 1 tomorrow morning, and 2 virtual meetings, and we've had regular meetings with the Chickasaw and Choctaw Nations. We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon. So this is the currently anticipated schedule based on what we know now, looking into the future imperfectly. The top tier here essentially is the regulatory agency consultations. The middle tier here, that's the field work. And the bottom tier, the top 2 of the bottom tier are modeling, and the bottom one essentially involves the state and that state water quality certification that I mentioned. So we expect that the NEPA analysis, which is this where my mouse is right here, we expect that to be wrapped up by the middle or third quarter of next year, 2027. We expect the regulatory consultation to go to the middle of 2028, and those little diamonds, those signify obtaining the necessary permits. So based on what we believe, what we know now, we think there's a reasonable likelihood of getting the permits in hand by middle of 2028. This middle tier shows you essentially that the field work will be, we expect for it to be accomplished by the end of this year, including the conceptual intake design. Modeling, we expect to go into the first quarter of next year. And the modeling really is critical for the ESA compliance. So, and it's very sophisticated and time consuming, but we expect it to be wrapped up in the first quarter of next year, and then the state water quality certification to be acquired shortly before final acquisition of the federal permits. So that's my briefing on the project and the environmental permitting. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Nazarenas?
So we get to 2028, what happens next?
We've got to find some money.
So we intend to start the design soon afterwards. We'll be doing some preliminary work prior. And then construction, probably about 2 years after that. So that'll put us right at 2035, and the significance of that date is our permit requires us to start taking water in 2035.
A lot more that goes into this than we ever thought.
Oh, yeah. So it's a 30-mile pipeline, and, you know, it's a third as long as the current Atoka pipeline that's under construction. Will be the same size, 72-inch. So we'll be constructing a pipeline from the Kiamichi River to Lake Atoka to Pump Station O. And then from there, that pump station will transfer the water to Draper.
Nice. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, Stacy. Next item, General Manager's reports. Lake levels, Hefner and Canton are full. Draper's about a foot down, Atoka's 5.5 feet down, and McGee is 7.6 feet below full pool. Storm report, minimal impact on our facilities. We had some chemical feed issues at Draper, but they're not impacting the ability to meet the water demands. So we're in pretty good shape. We had very few main breaks over the cold weather. I think we had 7 over the last 4 days, so that's not too bad. Hope everybody weathered the storm well without any serious impacts. And again, I want to thank the team. Great job again, and I appreciate all your hard work. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any citizens to be served? Are you sure, Amy? You know, you've had enough for today? No citizens to be heard, therefore we are adjourned.